Thanks for being here. I'm going to talk about video management systems. So hopefully that's why you're here, is to learn a bit about video management systems and deploying video management systems. Do many of you already have one, or some of you already do? Who is looking for a video management system? New. Okay, so that's more of you then. Okay. So to give you a little bit of background, anybody here heard of her Real Story Group before? Nobody at all. Okay. That's good. I'm glad. That means it's worth my time to be here. Real Story Group is an analyst company. We operate actually in about 5 or 6, actually have 6 offices around the US. And we sell in about 60 different countries our research. So we're primarily a research firm, and we do a lot of research in this particular space of video asset management. And I live down in Philadelphia. I spend a lot of time up here in New York. And it's primarily, like I said, an analyst firm, research company, and we also do strategic consulting. So if you'd like to visit us on Twitter, there's my Twitter handle, as well as Real Story Group. If you want to tweet anything about what I'm saying, feel free to do that. So I mentioned we're a research company, also a strategic consulting company. Most of what we do is help people pick products. That's the main goal of our both our research and our consulting. So our research reports are very similar to consumer reports, if you're familiar with those. We essentially take products and we compare products, and we do a lot of consumer-oriented research around those products. So we talk to end users and say, how was your experience with this particular product? Did it work well? Did it actually live up to its marketing promises? And the whole reason we're called the Real Story Group is because we believe there's a lot of marketing mumbo-jumbo out there. Technology companies make a lot of promises that they don't necessarily keep. So we are completely buyer-oriented, and we don't do any work for the vendors that we evaluate. So it's a strictly buyer-side consumer advocacy service for technology buyers. Hopefully that makes clear what we do. So the session I've prepared for you today is about enterprise video in general. Going to be talking about the use cases for enterprise video. What are the different types of use cases? You probably come from different sorts of organizations, and you have different sorts of video. Some of you might be with broadcasters. Some of you might be with more corporate side video. So one of the most important things to understand if you're going to deploy a video management system is, first, what kind of video are you actually trying to manage? Because there are different solutions for different sorts of video and different sorts of use cases. So I will talk about what those different situations are and what kinds of technology map to those use cases. Then I will talk about the core functionality of video management systems and what types of functionality you generally want to employ in certain situations. And then I'll give a little bit of a market overview in terms of who the different vendors are that are operating in this space. We don't cover every vendor out there. There's a lot of people, I should say, solutions that are being offered here at this conference that we don't necessarily cover. But I'm very happy to answer whatever questions I can about different vendors. And as I said, I don't represent any technology at all whatsoever. I'm here to help buyers make smart decisions. So you can feel free to jump out with any questions you might have. Is there anything else that people are hoping to get out of the session? You can just feel free to shout that out, raise your hand. I'm very happy to adapt and bring up whatever information I have on this laptop. So, okay, great. Okay, first thing. Video asset management scenario. So if you're going to deploy a video management system, one of the most important things that you must do first is actually define what kind of video am I trying to manage. There are various variables that are really key in understanding when it comes to video management. One of them is the length of the video. One of them is the resolution of the video. One is the channels that you need to deploy to. Those are 3 big things. But first, understanding what's the use case. So there's a lot of different use cases when it comes to video, and some of them aren't even particularly specifically video. They might be sound purely, but I like to make that distinction because there are specific technologies that are in fact video oriented, but then there are some that are just radio oriented. So these are sort of key broadcast scenarios that I would start if you're in any of these spaces to think about. Specifically, there are solutions that supply these particular markets. Also, if any of you are from the TV and cinema world, there are specific video management solutions for that market. There's also very specific video management solutions for corporate situations. Who here is not a broadcaster in terms of not a broadcast company? Okay, so about half of you. That's a little bit more than half. So I would not recommend, if you are in the business of managing corporate video, necessarily going with a broadcast media solution or a broadcast video solution. And I'll talk about some of the reasons why that is. There's very specific video management, I should say software products that are specifically for modernizing old media. So if you have things that are on old tape, or if you have things that are still on VHS, whatever it might be, there's companies that are very specifically existing for converting that into some sort of modern video format and allowing you to monetize that in some way. There's a great use case that I recently saw that was the World Wrestling Federation, or World Wrestling Entertainment, I guess they're called now. So if you're a wrestling fan, they went through a large initiative specifically to take all their prior seasons of wrestling matches and monetize them. And there are people now who subscribe to the wrestling matches from the 80s to actually watch those. So there's specific solutions for that kind of thing. Also, if you're in the government or judicial area, there's specific solutions there. Then there's a whole different world of software solutions for things like live events. Obviously, there's a lot of representation at this event for specific solutions to do that. Town hall meetings for internal broadcasts within corporations. And then finally, we have a whole separate set of software solutions for things like social media marketing and creating video to do marketing, not only on social media, but perhaps on YouTube or something else. So it's not as easy as just how do you manage video, right? So this is the first thing you need to think about, is where do I actually put myself in this equation? You know, what is the use case for my video? And maybe you cross a couple of these. Your typical corporation might need to do internal video management and also video marketing. But sometimes a sports broadcaster will be producing, you know, very long sports broadcasts, as well as doing some internal video management as well, because you want to have a town hall meeting with the CEO. So you might even need two solutions. And I'm going to talk about what sorts of software products fit into these different scenarios. Make sense? Okay. First, let's look at three different sorts of solutions. So I'm going to talk about EVPs versus MAMs versus OVPs. And I'll describe, you know, what the difference among these are. Are people clear on the differences of these already, do you think? No? Okay, good. Lots of head shaking. All right, so this is worth the time to describe this a little bit. Okay. First, Enterprise Video Platform and UC, which is Unified Communications. So if you're in a situation where you need to manage video for internal communication, maybe if you're a very large corporation, global, and you have internal webcasts, you have the CEO doing the earnings call, you have virtual meetings, or you want to record, for instance, a web conference where you've got 5 or 6 different parties in different locations so that someone can watch it later. That is this world of video. Primarily oriented towards internal communications. So, as I mentioned, video conferencing, executive communication, also e-learning and trading. This is a huge part of the video management world right now, is training new employees. If you have a new product rollout, if you have a new software rollout, that's a whole separate world of software there. Web conferencing, live events. Then you have what's called a media asset management platform. There's a little less representation of this market here at this particular event. But this is oriented towards broadcast media management. So this is specifically if you are a broadcaster and you have long-form, high-resolution broadcasts that you need to manage, and you need to do video component management. So if you have, for example, an hour-long broadcast of a sporting event, which a sporting event would probably be more like 4 hours or 5 hours, you need to be able to splice it into components. You need to be able to tag those components based on different criteria having to do with that particular sporting event or having to do with that particular broadcast. And usually, these particular types of systems will have industry-specific functionality. That's especially true for sports. And I'll show you some screenshots of what these particular tools look like. Finally, we have an online video platform, and most of you are probably familiar with OVPs. These are the most common, and of all these things, the least expensive. And this is really towards, these are solutions like Kaltura, Uyala, et cetera. I'll talk about more of them later, that are oriented more towards marketing use cases. So you have short video that's mostly only going to be on the web or on a mobile device. It's for advertising, it's for branding, content marketing, supporting e-commerce. So if you're trying to sell something and you've got a video to support it, or user-generated social media. And for those of you who are taking pictures and typing vigorously, I'm very happy to send you a copy of the slides. So don't worry about taking notes really quickly. All right? So as I mentioned, these are 3 separate software markets, and separately they fulfill that very complex world of scenarios in different ways. Okay, so as you think about what are the scenarios I fit into, and then think about, well, what are the solution areas that I might need to hone in on, you can start to think about, okay, this might be the path for my video solution strategy. And it might be 2 or 3 of these things, as I mentioned, because you might have all these needs, but you have to be careful to make sure you're not trying to put the square peg in the round hole, so to speak, and buy an OVP to do media asset management if you're a broadcaster, or expect your unified communications platform to manage video for the web. Okay? It's all different. Okay, let's talk about the core functionality of these systems. So, generally, the first thing you might want to do is create video. Now, I put create in quotation marks because creation is often called creation by some of these vendors when the video is already created. So you might be creating something in your Avid Interplay suite, and then you put it into one of these systems, and that's when the system declares it created. Okay. Then you might want to manage the video. So this is usually putting it through some kind of workflow of some kind, and then actually delivering it and pushing it out. And of course, in today's world, that's largely multi-channel, multi-device, etc. So in some of these systems, you can create the videos in real time, or it's something that's recorded previously and then gets ingested into the system, or it's something that allows for user-generated video. So, as an example, in today's social media world, you can take a video of yourself and put it online immediately. The media asset management platforms are very focused on this middle section, which is around editing. So when I say editing in this case, it's not what you'd expect to do in an Interplay suite. It's more, I have a long video and I want to take a still from it, or I want to take a piece from it, but I don't run an Interplay suite on my machine, or I don't have Adobe Premiere on my machine. I just want to look in this system and take a piece of this video. It allows you to do metadata and search on parts of the video. Okay, so you have layers essentially within the video, and you can assign different pieces of metadata. It allows you to do analytics on the video, so not just internally, what's the history, who's been opening it, who's been using it, but also if it's a consumer-facing system, it allows you to understand how many people have watched it, when did they stop watching it if they did, and those sorts of, what kind of devices were they on, those sort of statistics. And then also integrations. Maybe you want to push the video to your website. Maybe you want to distribute it via an app on a mobile device, so things like that. And then finally, video delivery. So multi-platform, as I already mentioned, a branded video player in some cases. They'll let you put your branding on it and put it on your website. They'll cache it for you, or they'll have a content delivery network partnership that'll push it efficiently and speedily to the right place at the right time. And then also managing rights and security. So if you are thinking about deploying a video asset management system, which many of you are, you'll need to think about these different pieces of functionality. And if you're going to send out an RFP or a request for demo or whatever it is, don't just say you want the system to do all these things. You need to describe how. Okay? I always say the difference among these systems is not so much what they do, it's how they do it. And what is the way that I'm going to be able to do all these things? Is it going to integrate directly with my video creation suite? Does it push directly to my web content management system if my web content management system is Sitecore, for example? So describe how you want this to work. Don't just say that this is the list of functionality I want. Describe the how. This spectrum is usually accomplished with 2 to 5 technology products. So the reason I talked about the difference between OVPs and media asset management systems and unified communications is that when people want to do all of these things with video, it's not one product. They're not buying one system. They're usually buying 2 or 3, and they are connecting them and integrating them. And usually they are hiring some kind of system integrator to do that. That's just important to remember. Here's an illustration of what this sort of thing looks like. This is just a small Swedish vendor called Screen9, and they specifically, I just like this illustration because it covers most of the things that I talked about in a visual way, where a video is coming in, it's being ingested, it's potentially being encoded. There's often a player, so at the top left there, That idea of a branded player is very common today, where they make the video player look and feel like you want it to. Mobile deployment, and then the analytics, potential monetization, and syndication if you need to push it to partners. And this is the whole picture, but again, it's multi-system, multi-solution, multi-technology approach. Make sense? Okay, nodding, good. All right. I want to talk a bit about MAMs and OVPs specifically, because I think probably more of you are interested in externally facing video than the internal unified communications world. So one of the things that a lot of these systems have overlap in is the transcoding piece, and transforming or transcoding a video from one format to another. But this is something that you'll need to figure out what is your system of record here to do this. And what we often find is that you've got a set of business rules where you're ingesting maybe multi-formats of video, and you're consistently, when you put it into one system, you're saying, okay, this is going to be our format of record, whatever that format of record is. So maybe you have all this historic flash video files, and you want them to be universally stored in MOV. So a lot of times we put them consistently in one format in your system of record, and then you can actually push them out in multiple formats based on what your channel needs are, based on who you're syndicating it to, based on whether it's to a network or a website or whatever. So as you're thinking about deploying a video management system, think about what are your current formats, right? What do you want your main format of record to be? And then when it comes to transcoding on the way out and pushing out to multiple channels, how are you going to do that? What system is going to do that? Because some will use a media asset management system to do that. Some will use an OVP to do that. The important thing is to decide what formats you need and how they should get pushed out, and then what would do that conversion. If you have very intense multi-channel needs, you'll also specifically want a dedicated server to do this, to constantly be transcoding, because it can be extremely taxing on servers. Another example, detect the device in the media player and push this format. This is just a key part of this whole equation that you'll need to focus on and think about as you're deploying. To talk specifically about OVPs, these are mostly software as a service, which is why it's just a rapid adoption. A lot of people don't want to host their own video. They don't want to be streaming their own video. So this is a situation where you can create the videos and put them online and have them streaming very easily. These are some of the things you'll want to think about. Many of these tools, many of the OVP tools do have many of the spectrum of the functionality that I talked about, or a great range of the spectrum of the functionality I talked about. So not just hosting and encoding, but also giving you the analytics, allowing you to syndicate, interactivity. So what I mean by interactivity is if you have an ad or you are trying to integrate with e-commerce, it'll run or overlay some kind of advertisement, allow you to click through and then drive people to some sort of monetization through that process. So this is the kind of stuff that you should test when you're looking at that. As many of you probably know, these are the inexpensive way in. If you're thinking about nascent video management, you might want to start by looking at OVPs. Because if you are just creating video and putting them on a big drive today, by starting to experiment with an OVP or running some kind of proof of concept with an OVP, you can do it at a relatively low cost with just a few video, and eventually they will, of course, start to charge you more as the volume goes up. But it's at least a start for video management. Okay, getting a little bit more complex from the OVPs are the media asset management systems. And again, I will tell you who all the vendors are in each of these spaces in a few moments. So these are the systems that mostly broadcasters will use, and they're very expensive, frankly. They start $400,000 to $500,000. The typical broadcaster will spend $1 million to $3 million on buying and implementing one of these systems. So they're not inexpensive. These are for the long form broadcast management scenarios. So I know some of you are in that space. And what this is showing is the different components within these systems. So it's very, very, very multifaceted, quite complex. This is showing ratings from one of our research reports. So I mentioned Real Story Group is a research company, and we, like consumer reports, we specifically rate the different aspects of the system and how well they perform in different scenarios. So it gives you an idea of the different parts that we look at and how well they perform in various situations. Now I'm going to show you a few examples. This is short-form corporate video management. So if you're one of those corporations that many of you raised your hands, maybe you have a lot of short-form video. I define short-form as a couple seconds up to about 2 minutes. So it's sort of a typical advertising video spot. Here's an example of what one of these systems would look like. And I always say if you are about to deploy one of these systems, think of it like buying a car. You need to test drive it. You need to take it and you need to get your hands on it. You need to kind of move around in it and decide if it's the right car for you. It's the same thing with these systems. You should ask for a sandbox, or you should install it yourself, and you should test it. And if the vendor doesn't want you to do that, then don't work with them. I always say that's when it's time to break up. Okay, don't even keep going down that path. So this is a vendor called Atom, which is, they specifically operate in the corporate digital and media asset management space. They don't really do broadcast video management. But it's very, very simple. You've got a thumbnail of the video on the left. You're able to write a description, and then you've got very basic metadata. It will actually parse out the audio file. So if you do want to manage or use the audio file separately, it allows you to do that. It allows you to manage subtitles if you'd like. They're very good at multilingual management, so good example there. And it also allows you to create packages of video and other materials. So for example, if you're doing a social media campaign and you want to push out a video as part of an email, it'll let you put that into a collection and then push that out in an email format. So that's just one example of what it might look like. And that's in a web browser, by the way, specifically. That is a web interface. This one is an iPad, as I'm sure you all recognize. And I'll show you this example specifically because one of the key focuses for many vendors in the video management space is how do we do this on tablets. And I don't mean the consumer looking at the video on the tablet. I mean the person who's managing the videos, working for the company, on the go, to be able to watch these videos and pick one and say, yeah, this is the one that's going live, or this is the one that is good for the campaign. So I'm just going to play this and let you watch. This is on Safari, on an iPad, using a video management system and sort of categorizing and using the videos. So they're doing a multi-select here where they're dragging the thumbnails into a folder just to categorize the videos, making sure that they're correct. And then it's allowing the person to use the multi-touch functions to make the video bigger and preview it, categorize it a certain way, and then just using multiple windows to be able to look at a larger version of the video and put in some metadata. That's pretty much it. So it gives you just a basic example of what it's like to manage video on an iPad. They're getting better and better at this. I will say that there's some vendors that have moved their interfaces into HTML5, thus facilitating this sort of management and deployment within companies. But then some vendors, they don't have anything like this. They have a rich, thick client that only runs on Windows desktops. And so you have no hope of actually doing this sort of thing. And I'll talk about what vendors are better or worse at that in just a minute. Another thing you should think about if you are looking to deploy video asset management is, do I need to actually have collaborative markup on my video? This is a growing trend in functionality with some of these systems, where if you're producing especially a short form 30-second ad spot, for example, you can run through it and you can mark it up. Where somebody looks at the bottom, you've got a story board there. Essentially, the system will ingest the video. It'll separate it into a piece-by-piece storyboard, and then it'll allow different people to log on and collaborate and mark it up and say, this shouldn't be $2.99, it should be $3.99 for this particular thing. Or, I don't like the fact that the door is red, let's color it in green, or whatever it is. This is a pretty simple tool called Concept Share, and it's specifically for collaboration. That's really all it does. It's for image and video collaboration. So if you have a targeted need around that, It's hosted as well, so you don't have to host all the video. You just ingest it, and then it'll allow people in different locations to mark it up and do this kind of thing. So that's a pretty interesting proposition there if you have collaboration needs. Here's a very complex video management system. But I really like this example because it shows really a unique way of managing video, not only for internal users, but also external consumers. So this is a company called Nettaport. I don't know if has anyone heard of Nettaport.com? No? No one. Okay. They sell incredibly expensive high-end fashion products. Okay. So very, very successful website, and they're I want to say more than $1 billion, I think, in a year in commerce. Offices in New York and London, and they essentially only sell very, very high-end, expensive products. And they acquired an extensive video library of fashion videos of models on a catwalk, basically wearing Armani products and Jimmy Choo shoes and things that people spend several $1,000s a piece on. And so this was wonderful for their e-commerce needs because essentially they would have these beautiful pictures of these products that they would take themselves, but they didn't necessarily have the fashion designer being interviewed about what inspired this particular design or what inspired this particular product. So they bought all this video, they ingested it into a video asset management system, and then they did something particularly brilliant, which was they brought in a whole bunch of fashion students from the London Fashion School to assign metadata to the video. So they watched the video and they tagged it with different producers of designers of the clothing, different supermodels, different locations where the video was, when the video was shot, and then they use all this now to support their e-commerce. It's not the easiest thing to get people to drop $3,000 on a purse on the internet, right? You might get them to do it here on Fifth Avenue, but not necessarily on the internet. But this did amazing things for their entire business proposition because they had the video and sort of the compelling swarm of media around it to really make it more exciting. So this interface is actually their search interface where you can go in, not consumer facing, but internally facing. So if they had someone who was designing a web page to say, okay, we're going to sell this beautiful new pair of Jimmy Choo shoes, let's go in, let's find a picture of a famous model wearing the shoes, walking down the catwalk, looking fabulous, with a wonderful interview with the fashion designer. They're able to find that very easily, and the beauty of it is when you do the search, it actually gives you a sort of multi-thumbnail view. A lot of times when you have a video management solution, it only shows you the first screen, which doesn't necessarily tell you about the contents of the video. But in this case, they can go in, they can stream, they can pick a selection from it if they just want to use a shorter clip on the website and then deploy it to support whatever new product they're selling. So you've got a tag cloud on the top left there that allows you just to click any of the major categories. You've got the year, and they have stuff going way, way back, many, many decades. So they could even tell a retrospective story of Jimmy Choo shoes if they so desired. And then location of the fashion shows. You can see it's all the major, sort of fashion capitals of the world: London, Milan, New York, Paris. And then finally, a long list of people that continues to scroll down, which is all the different models. So this gives you an idea of sort of the power that you can have in a video asset management system, the different capabilities, and also, again, this is internally facing, but also then taking it externally was what really made it effective. Okay. Here's a sports example that I wanted to show you all, since I talked about how this was particularly complex. So this is a sports-specific media asset management system. And you'll find if you're looking to manage video, many companies focus on particular industry verticals, and they will specifically put in front of you an industry-specific taxonomy, for example, that you can have as part of the system. So here, you can't quite see this, but on the top left, you've got both soccer teams that are playing right now. You've got all the players on the team and their jersey number. And what the system allows you to do is, as it's managing the game, essentially the whole game, you can go through and tag when particular players are in the game, so that if you need to do a retrospective of all of Ronaldinho's great plays during the game, you'll be able to go back and find all the particular clips for that particular player. So many of you probably don't need to manage video to this level of granularity, but it is possible. So if you do, this is an example of how you might do that. The more complex it gets, the more expensive it gets. So, if all you have to do is put some 2-minute, 30-second to 2-minute videos online to stream, you can go with an OBP. You can spend a couple $1,000s a month. It's not that complex. If you have to do something like this, where you've got 3 to 4 hour broadcasts and you need to splice and dice it and produce it and send it out high definition to a very high-end network, that's where you're talking millions of dollars to get that done. So it is a spectrum. All right, last section. Let's talk about all the technology vendors that do this. Okay, I have a handout. Because this is impossible to read, I always bring printout. So here we go. This is my Oprah moment where I walk down into the audience and I hand it out. You can all take one, pass it on. You can take bonuses for your friends. And what we have is, this is a subway map. And this shows the content management marketplace. And the content management marketplace is very big. We cover, at Real Story Group, about 258 vendors, I think, at last count. And these are all different technology vendors that manage content in one way or another. So the video line is the lime green, okay, that starts in the top left. And also the light purple line that intersects with the lime green line. That is specifically vendors that manage both video and image and brand assets, okay? Now, what we try to communicate in this particular subway map is what these different vendors specialize in. And you've got all these big hubs in the middle. This is modeled after the London Tube map. For those of you who have been to London, I'm sure it looks familiar, and that's because that's what we modeled it after. But the big guys in the middle, they're the household names, right? So OpenText, IBM, Adobe, Microsoft, Oracle, they all have, more or less, some sort of video management solution. More often than not, it's crap. I will honestly say that, because it's just not their focus, right? The big infrastructure vendors are not really out there to manage your video. But many of them will have some kind of system that they purchased and that they will sell you as part of something else. Usually, if you went to them and say, I just want to buy video management, that's not their world. They want to sell you a giant infrastructure play that's millions of dollars. So even though in many cases the video line goes through those, they're not particularly focused in those areas. The one exception there of those I mentioned will be OpenText. They have a very, I would say, advanced and feature-rich video management solution as far as the big vendors are concerned. If it's not a big station, that specifically means it's a best-of-breed solution, okay, or a best-of-breed vendor, where that is all they do. So the vendors that appear just on the lime green line, these are vendors that specifically focus on video management and nothing else. That's all they do. And in some cases, that might be right for you. I think particularly with video, it is good to go down that path, because managing video is a very unique thing. It's very different from managing web pages or documents or all these other sorts of content that you might be managing in a corporation. And if you're a broadcaster, then you definitely have to go to that line. If you're a broadcaster, you're not really going to get good video management solution from anyone who doesn't fall on that line in our assessment. Okay? So you can all take that home, and if you want a digital copy of it, you can go to realstorygroup/vendor map. And I could talk about this for hours, but I won't today because we don't have time. But you can feel free to send me questions on it. So let's talk about selection process. If you are out to pick one of these systems and deploy one of these systems, I always say there is no best system. And one of the reasons we started our analyst company is because we sort of didn't believe the magic quadrants of the world. We didn't believe the waves of the world. Because we looked at them and he said, well, we would say, okay, there's 5 vendors at the top, but they're not necessarily the right 5 vendors for a small company, or they're not necessarily the right 5 vendors for a different sort of situation than a big company might be in. So we say you have to find the right fit, right? There's not best vendors. There's a vendor and a solution that's right for you and your company and your size and your budget. So don't just think, okay, I'm going to throw darts, or I'm going to pick who's ever at the top of some ranking. What we say is you need to narrow down based on fit. So I will talk about that. We say there's 4 main filters to start. The first thing is, okay, what's the scenario? So I started this presentation by talking about scenarios. There's so many different forms of video, so many different aspects of video, long form, short form, corporate, broadcast, all these different types of video. You need to think about what is my scenario, right? And that was why I started the presentation. Think about what scenario you fit into. And if it's 2 or 3, that's okay. But prioritize what those scenarios are. Second, what is the technology fit? So some of these systems, for example, especially if you're going to do an internal deployment of these systems and not do something hosted, some of them run on Microsoft technology. So the one example I showed of Atom, the corporate video management solution, it's completely Microsoft oriented. You know, it's .NET. It uses Microsoft Expression Encoder, and it's all Microsoft. That might not be right for you. So think about, what's my technology profile? Are my guys and gals that are doing the technical work, are they going to actually want to work with this system and set it up and support it? Then partner fit. So we often find when we help companies procure systems that you get down to 2 or 3, and they're very technologically similar. It's kind of like buying a car. You know, they all have 4 wheels, they all have steering wheels, they all have, certain horsepower, etc. And they tend to be similar when you narrow it down to your needs. But then you think, okay, is this the right partner for me? Do I want to work with this company? Do they want to work with me? Do they understand my industry? Have they ever done anything like this before, specifically for a company like mine and a group like mine? So think about that. And then finally, value. I often say to companies, okay, so what's your budget for this? And they don't have one. Or they say they don't have one, or they're trying to justify the budget. You need to think about that before you go into buying a video management piece of software. How much money do you have to spend? There's a huge spectrum of cost in these solutions, and there's something at every end of the financial spectrum for this. The cheaper it is, the less functionality we'll have, but that doesn't mean it's not enough for what you need to do. But try to establish a budget before you go in, because it will be more productive for all people involved. Okay, last section. So who fits into these different use cases? So I talked about internal use cases and enterprise video platforms. These are the vendors that we cover in this space. So these are both hardware and software, or they have integration mechanisms for hardware and software if you're only buying one thing from them. Few offer that entire spectrum of functionality. So when I talked about the creation, management, deployment, not all of them do this whole entire spectrum, but it gives you an idea of who plays in this specific world. So if you're if this is your primary use case, this is some of the vendors you want to look at. Okay, the external use cases. So I talked about media asset management, long form, broadcast. These are key players in this space. There are more, but these are the ones that we happen to cover in our research. I don't know, I think a couple of them are here, but not too many. But if you go to some of the conferences like National Association of Broadcasters, they play in that whole space. So if you're a broadcaster, you might want to look at some of these. Large-scale enterprise DAM, so that's why I say digital asset management. These are vendors that do a lot of the corporate video. So if you're looking at short form, I need to be able to ingest video, parse it, manage the metadata, that whole management piece that I talked about. These are some vendors you might want to look at. And then there's what I call mid-scale enterprise and work groups. So if you're a smaller company, you have mostly short-form video that's web-oriented. There's several in here that would make sense for you. Some of these are more image-oriented than video-oriented, but vendors like Net Exposure, Wave, some of the open-source tools like Resource Space, etc., those are ones that do quite a bit of video. So as I mentioned, broadcast MAM, long history of long-form support, software. All these are software vendors, not hardware vendors. And the DAM-focused ones that I have in that category, they do photos and brand assets as well as the corporate video. If anybody has any questions about these, I'll be happy to take them in the few minutes that we're going to have left here. External use cases. So here's OBP. Most of these guys are here, I think. So you can talk to several of them. Video hosting, streaming, branding. They also have really good integration capabilities. You know, a lot of these vendors exist because your typical, web hosting company isn't going to take care of hosting your your video, your high resolution, or I should say your web resolution video. So you want to talk to them, especially if you're just getting started with video. This is a good place to start. I list a few more selection considerations here. These are things you'll want to think about as you are picking a video management system, how much of this you want, to what degree you want it. I always say make sure that you describe how you want this to work. Don't just say I want a system that has integration features and allows user engagement. Describe it. Tell me exactly what you want to happen here, how it should work. Bless you. And then here's some specific to OVP. So since this is really a getting started session, a how-to session, I recommend if you're going to go talk to the OBP vendors, which are the best represented here versus the other markets that I talked about, these are some things you might want to ask them about. Think about how you're going to be able to ingest the video, how you're going to be able to manage the video, publish, what kind of video player are they going to give you, is it going to be skinnable, brandable, does it integrate with social media, is it going to allow people to rate, like, promote, share, all that kind of stuff, and then security, access control, encryption, all that good stuff. So be sure to think about how you want that to work. If you have a demo, I have 4 minutes left. If you're going to have a demo with these vendors, I always say never, ever, ever ask for a demo open-ended. Always say send them some of your assets, right? Take some videos, describe exactly what you want to do with those videos, and then have them demonstrate to you your use case. Don't watch canned demos are a waste of everybody's time because you can't necessarily put yourself in the frame of context of the demo, right? I'm going through this right now with a customer where they specifically are getting submissions for a contest. So they want their end consumers to upload video. They want to be able to review the video and let people judge the video, rate the video, and go through this process. So we supplied them with 10 videos. We said, okay, next week, that's what I'm going to be doing on Monday and Tuesday is watching demos that are specifically with the content so that they can pick and really be able to compare apples to apples. Make sure you ask tough questions. Make sure you understand the pricing. And I always say, finally, do a proof of concept or bake-off. So if you find 1 or 2 vendors that you really like, make sure you do that test drive, right? Just like I talked about with the car. You want to make sure that it works for you and your users. Some people say it's not worth the time, but I always say it's much, much bigger waste of time if you pick the wrong system. So make sure that you take the time before you sign. Finally, some licensing tips. Some of these systems charge per user. Some of these systems charge per CPU or server that you have to run. Some of them charge per content, so all the hosted vendors tend to charge based on the volume of the content that you're putting on their servers. Some of them charge by module. So for instance, if you're just hosting the video, it might be cheaper than if you want something to actually edit and splice the video while it's on their servers. So you'll want to make sure you understand that. One of the difficult things is if you're going to deploy one of these systems, you might get proposals from 4 vendors that price 4 completely different ways, right? So you're going to want to make sure you normalize that and understand how the pricing works and you're actually comparing apples to apples. So again, narrowing it down, test, test, test. Make sure you're using it with your own assets and make sure that you are narrowing it down empirically and not just based on sort of emotional response to salespeople. Very important. I see people spend millions of dollars just because they like a sales guy. Don't fall for that. And to wrap up, best practices. Video is not all created equal. You want to understand the nature of your video. I talked about that already. Understand your use cases. If you're not a broadcaster, you probably don't need one of those broadcast MAMs. You probably need either an enterprise video platform or an OVP. So if you want, I can send you these slides. You can go back and see who those vendors are so you know who to look at. I would say start small, short form, gradually scale up, and make sure you address things like storage, transcoding servers, other infrastructure needs at the beginning. Don't leave it till later. And that is it. It is 2:29, so I have 1 minute left to ask questions. If you'd like a copy of these slides, you can take out your device right now and email my colleague at events@realstorygroup.com. She already has a copy of these, so she'll send them right to you. And she should send them to you today, if not today, tomorrow. Please feel free to visit our website. Since none of you knew who Real Story Group was, I hope you'll take time to get to know us. And follow us on Twitter. That's me. You can also follow me. And I really appreciate all of you coming today. If anyone would like a card, please come up. Thank you. Is there a speaker right away? I can take questions. Yes, apparently I can take questions. Yes, go ahead.
What's your feeling on open source platforms versus proprietary?
I don't, my feeling, that's a good question. Yeah.
Pros and cons versus
Yeah, I think it completely depends on the open source. Right, right, yeah, good question. I think that the open source, you'd have to, I always say you have to talk about the specific project, right? So with open source, it depends on the adoption, it depends on how big the community is, it depends if there's actually a community online where you can go and discuss and get the support that you need and the input that you need on the project. And also if there is a commercial company that supports that open source project, that's even better because then you have someone to call and actually get answers. That's why I always say if you're going to go the open source route, it's not usually a technology issue that would prevent you from selecting it. The problem tends to largely be, are you going to have a throat to choke when something goes wrong? So there are some really nice, Kaltura, for example, there's a lot of really nice open source, options out there. But I mentioned Kaltura because they have a particularly strong, they have a commercial company supporting it. They have a lot going on there where some of them just don't. So that's my caution. Make sure you're going to get the support you need on it. Other questions? No? All right. Thanks for coming.